that pattern and the movement repetition and the brain learning cycle all together. It's all happening at the same time. And the repetition, the myelination and growth in the brain, which is happening millions and millions of them at that time, because especially the early ages, that needs to happen. Kids need to have the ability to be on the floor, to kick, to explore their environment. So they learn, and these patterns with the myelination, with the repetition, they start to integrate inside the body. So afterwards, the child will start to learn to interact with the environment purposefully, not controlled by these reflex patterns. So first you see babies, everything is reflexive. Then they start being aware and response, perception, all those things starts to develop. So during that time, there's a lot of skills being developed. Hello, everyone, and welcome to RITP podcast. This is Kokeb McDonald, your host. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist and the founder of RITP. In the previous podcast, we talked about why vision, which is 20/20 acuity, is not enough when it comes to visual perception and vision. And in this one, I wanted to talk about just the primitive reflexes that disrupt the visual development. So I'll tell you a story. I took my kids to get vision therapy, and I'm actually an occupational therapist, right? I've been doing reflex integration work for, 2 decades or more. And when I took my kids, because we've been seeing eye teaming issues, and we took my son first to vision therapy, one of the first things they actually did, and I was really impressed because at that time, I was not seeing OTs or other therapists being skilled in incorporating reflex integration work in their session. But the vision therapist that I was working with, she started doing reflex integration work. One of the reasons that really motivated me afterwards to start writing my books and realizing I really need to bring this out to the public, especially to parents, because some of the movement that she was doing, the activities that she was doing reflex integration work. And of course, as a parent and a skilled therapist, I'm like, hold up, I can do that, right? So I can do that. But then I had to work closely with a vision therapist to really understand the why behind it for them, that they have to actually first work on the reflex patterns to even get to the visual skill, the eye teaming, the very tedious work that they do. And some of it I'm not trained to explain here. And I really encourage you to go check out a vision therapist. But they work with prism and other activities that requires a lot of attention. But that actually encouraged me into writing the Reflex Integration Through Play book series and activities, because that was the activity that I did as a parent myself. I started taking my kids, start working with them, and then just for specific reflex work, then I can send it to them in the activities that they can focus. So I felt like I was using my own kids doing the reflex integration part, they do the vision part. So that was my first interaction with vision therapists, which I really believe that other OTs and educators to consider with some of the clients that they're working with, whether or not the child needs that kind of support. So in this episode, what I want to talk about is, for those of you who are new to this podcast and wondering what are these reflexes everybody's talking about lately, it's just a brief explanation of reflex patterns. In some ways, could be primary motor reflex patterns. These patterns are automatic patterns that we are born with. So it emerges in utero for most of them, pretty much all of them emerges in utero. And then these are, you see little infants like kicking, or you touch them a certain place that they grab your hand. If you touch their palm, if you stroke their mouth, they open their mouth and turn towards you. If you put anything on their mouth, they try to suck and swallow. That is a reflex pattern. It's nature's way of survival and getting the child to move and interact to the environment. We want healthy, good integration in the body. So these reflexes need to kick in, and then the baby, the infant, responding to all these sensory stimuli in a specific way, in a specific pattern. That pattern, the repetition, the movement and the brain learning cycle all together, like it's all happening at the same time. And the repetition, the myelination and growth in the brain, which is happening millions and millions of them at that time, because especially the early ages, that needs to happen. Kids needs to have the ability to be on the floor, to explore their environment. So they learn these patterns with the myelination, with the repetition. They start to integrate. So afterwards, the child was to interact with the environment purposefully, not controlled by reflex patterns. First, babies, everything is reflexive. Then they start being aware and response, perception, all those things starts to develop. So during that time, there's a lot of skills being developed. There's gross motors developing, functional skills are being developed. There's visual skills, communication, interaction, social interaction, fine motor, you name it, everything's being developed at that stage, and one of them being vision. And there are certain reflex patterns that facilitate these vision. And then the ones that we're going to talk about, I'm going to list a couple of them. You're familiar with them. If you look at the RTP book series, the ones here behind me, you can look into them. Some of them I'll recommend would be the ATNR. Check out the STNR, the TLR. Our reflex pattern influences visual skills. So the ATNR, think of the ATNR as crossing midline. So when you cross midline, it's not just physical, it's also visual. You can also cross midline and think of auditory too. So there's a lot of crossing of the midline. Think of STNR, for instance, near and far visual tracking. And also think of TLR with up and down, also with peripheral vision. And all these reflex patterns also influence head control. So these are reflex patterns that influence head control. The STNR, for instance, or the TLR, even the Landau, which is lifting the head from the ground. That's one of the first reflex pattern that the child starts to integrate, start working on. It kicks in right away. Maybe around a month or so, had a baby on their tummy. They lift their head up against gravity. That's where head alignments happen. And then head alignment, and then there you see scanning. So it's very important to have tummy times. This is when we want to have tummy time, functional activity, developmental milestones that needs to kick in. So each of them build on one another. They don't work in isolation. I'm not saying when I say, let's say ATNR is for midline crossing, it doesn't mean ATNR is the only reflex pattern that influences horizontal scanning. That's not the case, okay? So it's just a combination of a lot of reflex patterns. So as a therapist, please get yourself trained and have a holistic understanding or a complete understanding before you start practicing with kids and giving treatments with not enough knowledge. So I encourage you to do that. And if you're a parent, definitely look for therapists who are well trained and specialists that are well trained. It's your right to look into if they're specialized. So don't feel shy about asking a specialist whether or not they have a license or not, to ask, hey, do you understand these things? And if not, that's okay. And can you refer me to someone who understand or can help me with these areas? So other reflex pattern that influences visual skill can also be reflex patterns that are connected to the hand, such as the palmar grasp, which is eye-hand coordination. So think of eye-foot coordination, eye-hand coordination, tracking, near-far, any kind of visual reflex pattern that influences the movement of the head can influence vision. So you can also think about it that way. And definitely learn to know how to screen, what to do about it, and create a treatment plan that is specific to that client and not just have a generic one. But it's good to have a generic to give you a starting point, but definitely need to have a specific screening with the child. I'll give you an example. I recently got pulled to work with a child, a very brilliant child, intelligent child, but cannot sit still. And I pulled him out, and I was like, okay, I need to check his spinal line. He's not sitting still, and I need to check his coordination. I did some screening that we do inside the RTP, and he's checking it off like nothing. I was not seeing spinal line, which I was amazed because I was so sure that he will have it. But then he surprised me. He was not having that. And I checked him from very controlled reflex activation screening. And when he focused, he hyper-focused. So he was able to do it. So when I was screening him, I was not seeing any of these reflex patterns to give me a sign saying, oh, I definitely need to work on that. But what happened was when it comes to a group activity and functional activity, he cannot cooperate because he gets lost and he's not able to do the activities in a group setting, while he did some of it, which was quite interesting with me when I pulled him when he was super focused. So at the end, I was like, what is happening with this client? It's kind of puzzling me. And then finally, I'm like, hold up, let's screen you visually. And he cannot team. There's no eye teaming, there's no crossing. Midline, you can see he literally just his eyes froze. So, what he's doing is because he's so brilliant, he compensates really well that instead of his eyes twitching, he just locked his eyes and he felt like he's almost like dozing. I was so amazed what he did with his eyes, and, I was asking him, like, "What are you doing with the eyes?" And he said, "Oh, I can totally turn my eyes," because his eyes were, like, bouncing around, he just hyper focused and he's not tracking, but he's just focusing one area. And he was not able to track. He got fatigued right away. He cannot keep up. And then when I take him back to his class, of course, he cannot do the group exercise. He would start walking around and he cannot do any of the balance, anything, visual motor activity. And he had difficulty with balance, which is connected to vestibular activity. Then that helped me understand where the challenge was. Yes, it's reflex pattern that I need to track, but then I was only seeing that when he was doing it in a more functional based activity, when he's not hyper focusing with one task. So just reflex screening might not give you the result that you're looking for. So you have to learn to screen by looking at functional skills. So inside RITP, if you're a service provider and you work with clients, you want to learn, we train reflex patterns to screen, but also how to screen a functional based developmental milestone. And because sometimes you don't see it when you activate it, one reflex at a time, because you won't with some of the kids, but you would definitely see the challenge. So you have to have a holistic way of screening it. So these are some of the brief reflexes you can look into. Definitely screen for the simple tracking to give you an idea where your client is at. And then, of course, creating a treatment plan that is appropriate and play-based and functional activities, okay? So you probably wondering, what is the whole point and how does this affect the child in the classroom and education? So some of the things you might notice in the classroom is the child having a hard time differentiating or separating the head with the body. Meaning, if you're having them track something or catching something, a ball, instead of just turning the head, you might see the entire body moving with the head. That might be one way they're compensating. So you have to be quick in screening and observing because that takes skill, that takes time to pick up all these hints right away in a short amount of time that you're going to work with kids. Unless you're videotaping them and going back and assess slowly, you only have split seconds sometimes to screen. And you cannot count on yourself catching everything. So it takes time to get that skill. For me, at least, I've been doing this for several years. I know new OTs come and they get overwhelmed, but I tell them, it takes time. Every skill takes time to learn, to pick up, and exactly what part of the body to focus on to get a whole screen, at least get as much as possible. And then also each session, I consider a rescreen. Like I'm constantly observing. So you might miss in your first session, but you can catch it on the next one. Other thing can be eye contact. It's not every time, but eye contact is one of them to look into. So head moving with the eyes, that can be a sign. Messy handwriting can be a sign. Difficulty copying from the board is one sign. These are additional things, challenges that the client might have. Letter or word reversal, fatiguing when they're copying or when they're writing, if they're fatiguing on you, that can be a sign. Postural collapse during this activity, that's part of a retained reflex challenge. Can be the TLR. You might need to work on other reflex pattern as well, because like I said, it's not just one reflex you're going to work on several things of the body because that child has figured out a way to compensate. So you have to figure out how to help them adjust and teach them and create a treatment plan that works. So not each kid the same. So different kid is going to bring different challenge for you to observe. So postural challenge balance is something you're going to notice. It can be vertigo or can be visual confusion. It can be not finding things in a classroom, you're asking him to go pick up something, not finding it in a messy area, not being able to find, not having figure ground. It can be difficulty with movement or motion sickness, so many things, because the vision is connected to a vestibular and our movement, and they're really close together. So vision and vestibular and balance tend to go together. They're separate, but they work really close together. So that can be something to look into, can be fatigue, eye rubbing, and then headache, and so many other different areas you can look into. But these are some of the signs that you need to start looking to just give you symptoms. It doesn't mean it's the cause, the problem. You figure it out, it's just vision, that's it. But it's at least one area that you can assess and make sure that you tackle, because more and more research are showing that there are a lot of kids are being misdiagnosed for other things like attention and focus. We'll talk about it in our next episode and make sure to catch the next one next week. It's actually vision challenge. So it's good for us to know early on, the more skilled we are as professionals and we know what to look for, the sooner we track and find the challenge that the client's facing, so we can help the parents, we can help the educators in creating a treatment plan that's appropriate, or adaptation, accommodation in the classroom that is really appropriate for them. Okay. So if you're a specialist, of course, again, welcome you to come and learn with us. There is a course called Visual Skills and Primitive Reflex Development in our website that's open to all. You don't have to go through the certification program to access it. But if your certification program, you already have access to it, but anybody else can access it. It's for parents, teachers, service providers. If you're interested, make sure to go down in the show notes and get access to that and learn with us. And inside the program, we'll give you like what to look for, what to screen, and some play-based activities that you can implement inside your sessions, if you're a teacher, even to implement inside your session to help you target the visual skill. And also to always remember to work with the vision therapist and a skilled specialist to target vision skills, because that is its own field. I really highly recommend to work in conjunction with them, not just separate or feel like you have to solve this problem yourself. Unless you're a vision therapist, of course, you're going in depth and this is the area that you're specializing in. So definitely collaborate with the educators, the teachers, and also parents for service providers, and how to work with the clients specifically. If you want to learn with us, I welcome you to come check out RITP with us. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope this is giving you an idea to look in depth on vision, because that is definitely one area we tend to miss 90% or more of the time. Throughout the day, we rely on vision, but we tend to miss it somehow. And I always try to remind our therapists inside RITP to always screen for vision and see what's happening there. It's really important to do so. Thank you so much for being here with me. And please share this with other therapists, other colleagues can benefit from it. And thank you so much for being here. And until next time, keep playing with purpose and integrating through movement. Talk to you later.